Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to be going over the book code for chapter 9, which covers cookies and sessions. Now cookies and sessions are ways to store information that we can use later. One use case is what you see in front of you, which is controlling font size and font color, any preference you want, so that when the user comes back we can reload the script, we can look at those cookies and keep their preferences the way people want them. So as far as cookies are concerned, I'm going to go to my DevTools right here. And what I've done is I've kind of organized the chapter 9 book code by having a prefix that has a number in which we'll go over it. But if we go to application here, you will see that there's local storage, there's session storage, and here are our cookies. So what we can do is put a font size of, let's say, medium, and we'll go with grayish. And when we set those preferences, you will see that my form action needs to be changed to one customize. Or, if you're just getting the data in your own script, just do that. Just clear it out. And that way you can change any number, any file name, and it'll work. So let's go back to this and we'll hit refresh so we get it. And we'll go with medium and gray again. And now it should go to one customize. It says your settings have been entered. Now see them in action. And what we're going to be doing is going to view settings in just a minute. But here's what we wrote. Font color is the hexadecimal gray 999. Font size medium. The domain is localhost because we are working locally. And the pathway, which when we set it, will determine what has access to those cookies, is on the root level in folder 09. It expires as soon as the session is over. And this is the size of that the data takes up in bits. So we haven't set a priority, so it defaults to medium. But now when we go back to 09 and we look at view settings, we see our gray and we see the font size. So let's take a look at view settings now. Actually, I want to spend a little time on exactly what just happened when we set the cookie. So basically, we have two input types of dropdowns. That's called a select one input type. But the name is font color and font size. We're using the post method. And if those are set, we can set cookie with the key and the value. With the key and with the value. Now, we don't have any other parameters that we put in our set cookie functionality, which is why it defaulted to medium, and after the session's over, it's done. But we'll get into how to set a cookie at a given time. So this is a piece of information that's not vital. It's not a credit card number, not something that's carries a security value. And that's why it's okay to do a cookie, because the fact is when we set a cookie, you can see all the information is visible. So if I were to set a cookie as a credit card number or a social security number, something important, someone could sit at the same computer and, basically steal people's identities. So this is a good use case for cookies. I wouldn't use anything more important than this. But by setting that cookie, we have a token on the user's browser that's only accessible by a script that's inside the 09 folder. And the view settings script looks at the super global scalar underscore cookie for font size. And if that is set, then we can print font size colon there. So that's why when we look at the source code on this, you're going to see the CSS is actually being controlled by PHP. So let's go back to view settings and just look at the source code, because if we look at this, you'll see, look at that, font size medium, color hashtag 999. So so far one of the more challenging things that students have a problem with is the frequency and freedom they have to put PHP inside their HTML. And so we've been doing that, the first half of the course. But, when you get into CSS, all we're doing is literally printing the CSS with two tabs. So it has that format, body, open brace, and you can envision what's being printed here. So print tab, font size, colon, medium. So otherwise, if cookie font size, if it exists, then print font size medium. Otherwise, just do print size, font size medium. So this is also checks for color value, and we're using HTML entities just to make sure that any odd characters get stripped down and converted so that it can be read. So we've got font size, font color, and here we see the p tag, because this is inheriting the body styles, and that's why yada 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 has all those values. Now the link wasn't changed because the link is not text. We would be, if we wanted to style this, we would do ahref. So going back to our browser, view your settings is right here, and if we look here and inspect, you're going to see nothing controls that because it is a link. But this is, when we inspect this, we will see body tag right here, inherited from the body. So that's view settings and setting a cookie for user preferences. Now if we move forward here, we have a second script, which I will go into right now, which is, let's do this. And we are going to set an expiry time to add 10 million, the current time plus 10 million seconds. So it's going to be a while. And when we do that, that means that the session will not expire until this time. So, and the pathway that we'll have access to will be /, which means the root level. So let's take a look at that. We'll go into this and we'll reset our font. This time we'll do red and extra small. Once we set those preferences, when we go to application, we can see a different path. This is the C00, which is red, XX small. You'll see the localhost, but look at the expiry, July 27th, 2023. So a few months away now, and the size is the same. So if I were to close my browser and open up, these two would disappear, but this would still remain. And that is Customize 3. You can see that the path has changed as well. So let's go to script 4 now. This is the reset, and what we're going to be doing is resetting our cookies. So if we go to chapter 4, which is reset, all we're doing is taking the same keys, font size and font color, making them have a value of empty, and then having an expiry time that goes back 6,000 seconds. So that's 10 minutes. Actually 100 minutes, because yeah, 60 seconds in a minute. So once we reset that, we can go and customize them again. So this is one way to reset and delete the cookies. Now, once again, only use cookies for things that are not valuable. So I'm going to pause this real quick, and so if we look at the script for Chapter 9, Part 5, you see information, which is actually the format of what a session might look like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and create another file just to give you an idea of what happens when you save a session. So in Chapter 9, I'm going to do something called a session example. .php. And all I want to do is do a session start, and then I'm going to do a PHP info. So session start will start sessions, and that means you can think of it as like a phone call where I'm connected with the server, and I can store individual items on that server. And once I close the browser, those get deleted. So it's a temporary thing. And we use sessions a lot when we talk about storing items when you're using a shopping cart, something like that. That's where we'd use a session. So when I do session example here, what I want to show you is we've got session ID here, right? And what this just happened. And this is the value of that ID. And localhost, and this is the pathway, which means the root for localhost. And it expires once the session is over. And then I can basically, now keep in mind we're looking at just cookies right now. But when I go to the PHP info, I want to show you the information that, this is all the information about the session. And the things that we want to look for is session save path. That's one of them. That's one of the important ones. This is the session ID name. That's the name of what we've done. But you can have use cookies, use only cookies, which means you put a token in that session. But we already saw what the token looks like. The token looks like it's a 32-character string. But what I want to show you is an applications map temp.php. So if we go to MAMP, and right now I'm in htdocs, here's the temp directory, here's the PHP directory, and these are the sessions right here. So because I typed in PHP info, I wanted to look at that session. So like right now, it looks like we have, let's do by date modified. We'll take a good look at that. And this is today. This is that session. And we have not stored anything yet, but it has the actual string, 5pkl. So if I go back to my my browser and we remember 5pkl, I can go into my DevTools and see 5pkl right there. So let's set a session and check it out to see if that script that we were just looking at, how that looks, right? So this is that session. We'll leave the file open. And what I'm going to do is do something like this. Scalar session teacher. We'll make it equal to Chris, just like that. And because session start has started, this session teacher will have a value. So now I just hit that, and there's PHP info and session teacher Chris. And if I go back to my session, you'll see that the document simply still has the handle. There's no Chris or teacher here. But if I go to the other file, which has the session right here, this should, and we can always go back. It looks like we got this. See how it says 19 bytes? Let's go and see what was written. And let's reload it. So there's teacher, string 4 characters, Chris. That's what that means. So every session will be on its own line and it'll work its way down the page. And what happens is that when we call those sessions back, it reads that file, which is a very cool thing. So that, when we look at this, we see that we have email, a string of 14, which is this long, login, which is an integer, which is this long. This is the timestamp for the logged in, but that's what this script means and what we're trying to show you folks. The handle or key goes into the cookies, but the actual information is in the session. Hopefully in a place that's secure. One way you can secure this further, honestly, is to take that session save path and move it above the root. So right now it's in the MAMP under TMP, so it is above the root. Sometimes you might see the TMP inside the htdocs, in which case, you know, it's a little bit more dangerous. In which case, I would recommend moving it above the root. But let's go on to our next script, which is a logon. We're going to start to put these things into action. And you'll see that he's given you an email and a password. So let's go ahead and play with that. So I'm going to go to login. We've looked at our script, and it was this is hold on here. We're going to go me@example.com and test pass. Okay, so we'll go back to our browser, me@example.com and test pass. And when we click login, oh, I've got to make sure that the login has the form going to the right location. So if we look at these values, login.php, the form itself needs to go to a blank script because we're really going to the same form, and I want to be consistent with that. I do that a lot with clients where I just me@example.com and test pass, where I'll just give them forms that don't have any action attribute. So, oops, that went to welcome. Oh, so it goes to login and then redirects to welcome, which we can do because it's called 7 welcome. That's where you need to be specific. So our logic here, this is what I get for changing these values. But 6, let's go to me@example.com and test pass. Hit login, and it goes to the J.D. Salinger fan club. It's sort of an extension of what we did in chapter 8, or chapter 8. So let's go to, this is Eastern time, by the way. I'm actually doing this at 12:05. So it's calling the time from the server. But let's look at the code. So we've got our form here, and it basically says, okay, either we have some data coming in or we display the form. So the form has your typical, email password. It sends its data to the same script. If the scalar_server request method, this is the login of the title, by the way, and that's why the field will have login. But when we look at this, if the email is not empty and the password is not empty, then let's say someone typed in a capital letter by mistake. We'll make it all lowercase so it matches the current email, and our current password is that test passed. Now, one thing of note that's important, this really should be in a database, and we'll get to that when we go into databases around week 12 or 13. Right now, at least because PHP is somewhat secure, we don't see it in the source code, which is what the case would be if we use JavaScript. So there is some value to this, and the logic really should be that these username and passwords are in the database. If you don't have access to a database, which is ultra rare, what you could do is have a list of usernames and passwords and stick them above the root level so it's not accessible to the public, and then test against that. But if these values match, then we can start our session right here and create a session called email that equals that email value, and create a session called logged in, which is the current timestamp in seconds. After that, we can clean out the session start. We need to destroy the buffer because technically the session start really should be the first thing that happens. It should be at the top of the script. And that's kind of how we'll be doing it when we do our applications. But after that, we just relocate them to 7 welcome. Otherwise, we just say there's a problem with the issue. There's no match between email address and password. And that would close out that condition. And then we have, if we have a problem with the user entering both. Of course, we should do this with HTML5, which means you use required and required. So all these technologies we really need to integrate together so that each one does what it specializes in. And with HTML5, it takes a lot of the grunt work out of JavaScript and PHP. So let's look at 7 welcome. And the last thing we'll look at after this is how to log out. So here we go. We're doing welcome to the JD Salinger fan club, and this goes into templates header, which is with the templates from last week if we were to use them. Notice how I used include and it didn't throw off an error. If I used require, it would, because those files are not in my chapter 9 folder. But here's our greeting, and you'll see that the session email has a value. And this right here is why it says 3 hours ahead of what time it really is, default time zone set. So what you can do is America, Los Angeles, if you want to keep the West Coast. But if you want to see the cities that you put there, if you go to date default time set and you throw that into php.net, you'll see a list of cities that you can use to control the server time zone. So this is date default time zone set, and as you scroll down, you'll see at some point you will have a list, I hope. Here it is, a list of supported time zones. That's the one right there. So if we go to America, we'll see all the ones that are available. So I always look for Los Angeles because it's the most common where we use the West Coast. There is no San Diego, unfortunately, but we have to think big. So anyway, when we log out, the logout would go to a place that is going to reset the session array, which means all sessions become empty. And then we session destroy, which means the cookie gets destroyed as well, that handle that we saw in the application tab on Google Chrome. And then we can have our definition. So that is the 7 script window. And we can go back to this right here. Go to 7, welcome, and then we'll log out. And when I do, I'm sorry, let me do, I think it was 8 log out. There we go. And we are now logged out with the warning for the include, which we could just take out anyway. So what did we just learn in the book code this time was cookies, sessions, how sessions set a cookie, and how we can destroy or delete a session, how we can control the time expiration of a cookie, and the logic behind actually logging in, where we create a session called logged in that equals the time that we logged in, so the user knows what happened. So the beauty of this is that when we do close our browser, that person will be logged out regardless. But I like giving them the control of controlling their own logout.